Hey friends, welcome back to the Cutlass Board Games channel. Off the back of creating custom Marvel Snap cards and playing a lot of the Pokemon TCG lately, I thought maybe it was time for me to take my hand into the arena of creating some custom Pokemon cards. Because game design is what I do for a living, that's my main dealio. So I was curious, is there a design space that I could expand on in the Pokemon TCG? Did I have some interesting ideas on when I could put some things together, make some cool cards? I've been seeing, there's like one person in particular, I'm pretty sure, in the Facebook groups that I'm in, posting custom cards, and a lot of the stuff that I see is they're either trying to do too many things at once or struggling to balance the cost for what crazy effects that they're trying to do. So what I've focused on here with these cards is trying to have a really high synergy without it necessarily being broken or like overly powerful. I'm looking for like maybe 6 out of 10s here. Some stuff being stronger than others, like this Radiant Pelipper here. It doesn't have the Radiant rule box, but it would be a Radiant rule box Pokemon. Just the custom card maker didn't have it. And it has 120 HP and the ability Males here. Males here is whenever your opponent plays an item card from their hand, you may remove a damage counter from one of your Pokemon. So it's just 10 damage. Just, one little damage counter. But if you're playing against something like Mew, maybe, that hits one of your guys for 210, it doesn't die, and then on the their subsequent turn, as they're building up to making an attack, they play 7 item cards, you heal 70 damage. But if they play no item cards and it's attack straight away, then it's probably knocked out. So it presents an interesting barrier where the greedier your opponent is trying to set up a board state or like continue momentum, the more it helps you recover. Whereas the opposite would be like if you were trying to steamroll to stay in front, it would be whenever you play an item card, because you're like, oh, I don't have any damage counters in play, I might not play item cards and sandbag them because I'm in front or like don't need to set up or whatever. Whereas it's the opposite intentionally, so that you're able to kind of come back from your opponent doing a lot of things, especially if you're bricked and trying to heal or catch up or whatever. And then it has an attack that has synergy with the ability, and the attack is Surf into Town. I tried to design this around the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Pelipper, which was a mailman. Surf into Town. If you have no Pokemon with damage counters on them, this attack does 60 more damage. So this was something that I'm like, okay, it synergizes with the ability, but also if you're in a like one-hit KO format, it's just like good in general, which I do like. So this was my first custom card that I put together. And you can kind of see what I'm doing here. It's got an ability that has a synergy with its attack, but also fits a specific design space. There's not a lot of stuff in the Pokemon TCG that happens during your opponent's turn. So this was something that I thought would be interesting, and I'm a big Pelipper fan, so I kind of wanted to just get my homeboy in there. Next we've got Munchlax. So I wanted to just create a wall, and a wall that deals very specifically with the current meta that we have in SNV. Which is Gardevoir, put 1 million psychic energy into play, Miraidon, put 1 million electric energy into play, and so on. And so Pokemon with 3 or more energy attached cannot attack. So all of your Pokemon that have only an attack that requires 3 energy, I'm talking Regieleki VMAX, Miraidon, all the Gardevoirs, and so on, can't attack. So it's like, this is kind of, the wall that we set up. It probably should have, if Munchlax is the active Pokemon, maybe that was an oversight. Because it might be a bit busted without that. But the ability is symmetrical, so your Pokemon that have 3 or more energy attached cannot attack. There's also a card that can attach energy from the discard pile to your opponent's Pokemon to perhaps activate this ability, which could also be scary. And then it has the ability Oran Berry Bash. So the kind of the joke here is that Oran Berry heals damage from you if you consume it, and Munchlax is known for eating berries. Anyway, it does 20 damage, but it has a secondary effect, which is you may remove 2 damage counters from a Pokemon to make this attack do 40 more damage. So that means the first time you hit something, it's 20. If you don't, like if there's no damage in play anywhere. And then when you attack them again, you can remove that 20 you've done to deal 40 more, which means it deals 40. So like it'll double every time after that. Which I thought was really interesting because it's like a mathematical perspective, but also it can like heal your Pokemon. It can heal itself if needed, because a lot of Pokemon that are attacking with less than 3 energy might not do a whole 100. It might actually, you know, help it wall a little bit, or it can pull damage counters off your bench Pokemon. So I thought this would be something interesting. Kind of a brawling tank that says that your big guys with big scary attacks can't attack. I'm just going to hit you over a long period of time, 40 damage at a time, to see how that goes. But maybe it's too strong, maybe it needs the, if Munchlax is your active Pokemon, but you know, this is something that you would do in testing. You would play it and go, oh, actually, this is super abusable. It needs, you know, this effect. But our next one is Rotom Phone. So Rotom Phone exists as an item, and I kind of wanted to have a Rotom Phone that was a Pokemon. So it has an ability, and the ability is what I thought would be really interesting, is that when Rotom is knocked down from damage from an opponent's attack, attach it to a Pokemon on your bench, and Rotom becomes a tool card. The attacks of the Pokemon this card is attached to cost 1 lightning energy less. So it goes from being Phone Rotom to being Battery Rotom, basically. Which I thought was kind of interesting, and especially because the Miraidon deck right now, especially like from what I've seen when I'm playing, plays for Arven, you have a lot of tools, usually XP share, but also Forest Sealstone, and so that slot being taken up by Rotom isn't a huge detriment, but also like with an XP share and a Phone Rotom losing, like dying, being knocked out, and also losing 1 energy as it's being knocked out, can put potentially 2 energy onto the same Pokemon maybe, or onto your bench rather. Which I thought would be really interesting as a way to like preserve the game state that you have. And then its attack. If your opponent's active Pokemon has a rule box, it has no abilities until your next turn. So the idea is that it'll only shut off like Pokemon V, Pokemon EX, you know, Radiant Pokemon in the meta at the moment. And the idea is that it would be a specific effect to them rather than hosing everything like Klefki does. And it's only if you're attacking. So like it's not going to happen on the first turn. I had a lot of ideas about other stuff, so I was really interested in just doing something that was specifically aimed at Rulebox Pokemon. I had a bunch of ideas about other stuff, but I started with this because I felt like this was the least broken version of it. Where it just was good. Instead of was crazy. And then again, like in testing, if that wasn't good enough, or people were just like, oh, you know, playing other things is better, maybe add more utility to it. Because Klefki has a similar thing, except it's like your opponent's basic Pokemon don't have any abilities except for this ability, and then also its attack removes tools. So like this is kind of like an inverted thing. It's like this thing has an ability that adds tools and has an attack that removes abilities and sort of occupies a similar space. So I thought that was kind of interesting and worth exploring here, because I wanted a Pokemon that became a tool. We've had Pokemon that can be energy. This is similar kind of a space. So I'll be curious to see how this would go. But speaking of batteries, we have Klefki, but steel, not not psychic and not as rude. But this Klefki is all about the ability. Now, the ability says, if your active Klefki is knocked out by an attack from your opponent's active Pokemon, search your deck for a basic energy card and attach it to one of your benched Pokemon. Now, on face value, you would assume Klefki gets knocked out, you search your deck for one energy and attach it to one of your basic Pokemon. Makes sense. However, if you're familiar with the Chestnut V has similar worded thing. If your active Chestnut takes damage, the ability triggers. And when you look at it the first time, you go, if your active Chestnut, okay, it's talking about itself. However, if you have a Klefki on the bench with this ability, and a Klefki in the active with this ability, when it gets hit, both abilities are going to trigger. So any Klefki on your bench will activate when the active Klefki is knocked out. So it just becomes one of those things where the more Klefki you can get in a play, the bigger the battery it is when it's knocked out. So if you have 4 Klefki in play, your active Klefki gets knocked out, you're going to go and get 4 energy out of your deck and put it onto something. Which I thought was really interesting. It costs prizes to set up as much energy as possible, but also takes up a lot of bench space. We have something similar coming soon in Scarlet and Violet in Paldea Evolved, the next set, which is a fortress that you can give up to prizes to put, I think, 4 energy onto one of your guys. And this is sort of similar, except the trade-off is you lose more bench space, you have to find more things out of your deck, but I guess the upside is that it can be used more than once, if need be. The way I see this is it occupies a space alongside the Magnezone that puts energy onto Pokemon in the Dialga deck or whatever. But it doesn't specify metal energy, so you could, in theory, put it in any charge up deck as a 4-of. I think that kind of utility might make it busted. Maybe it needs to be limited to metal energy. I don't know. A lot of these things are primary concepts, and then in testing, you would print out 4 of this, put it in a deck and play it a bunch, and then go, actually, this is a little crazy. And then go, okay, do I need to adjust this here? Do I need to reduce this here or whatnot? And then its attack is similar to Joust, it's only 10 damage, but it doesn't have a secondary effect, because I figured that the active effect was already kind of bonkers. This is also super weak to bosses orders, or rope maybe. But if your opponent gusts out the Klefki and gets something that's not a Klefki, Klefki stops being useful. So I guess it's not busted. And it specifies an attack from your opponent's active Pokemon. You can't do something yourself to get it knocked out. So I don't know. I think it's worth looking at. It's worth exploring. Because I think it's interesting. I think that if your active Pokemon, where the ability can trigger on itself and trigger stuff from the bench, is a really interesting design space, and I would like to see more things do that, where it will rewards you for completing this set, or rewards you for getting more into play. Because I think that that's really interesting, and that's what I really liked about building decks around Chestnut. Because it's okay, if I have 1 Chestnut, it's really good. If I have 4 Chestnuts, it's really, really good. Really good. And I think that's also a risk-reward player choice thing, where they feel really, really accomplished in building the whole set, in the same way. Oh man, they KO'd my Klefki on turn 1, I got 4 energy, I basically get to go, okay, my turn, my Dialga just goes off, basically. And then when they KO you back, you have Klefkis to help reset. Would be really interesting. But anyway, that's Battery Klefki. So I really had some interesting ideas about utility Pokemon. And then next, we've got Tentacle. So there's a few older Tentacle. I think the very first one has an ability that is Cowardice, I think it's called. And you just put it in your hand. And I was like, okay, I like that idea. I like the idea of the small Pokemon that it just gets scooped up pretty easily. And then I was like, what if I'm discarding them, or I'm collecting them and discarding them? Kind of like a V-Union Pokemon, where you're trying to get them all together, get them into the discard pile so that you can use a big cool effect. And I was like, well, okay, what about we get to discard a bunch of them to do stuff? I kind of like Blow-Away Bomb. Blow-Away Bomb is a coughing ability, but you have to have a specific supporter to discard any of coughing's a Blow-Away Bomb to put damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon. I was like, what about something in that vein? Collect the set, discard the set, and deals a bunch of damage. So what the ability reads is Courage of the Swarm. During your turn, discard this card and 3 other Tentacle cards from your hand. If you do, put 7 damage counters on all Pokemon with a rule box. So that would include your Pokemon with a rule box. So you'd be incentivized to be playing a single prize deck. And then you'd play this alongside some other strong attacks, but they don't specifically have to be water type. It's just playing water type gives you the advantage of if you lead with basic Tentacle, like you had no other cards in your hand, you can use Swim Away to put it back in your hand. But I think this is kind of interesting because you're like, get the 4 cards, I get to put 7 damage down. Okay, can I do this a second time? Like, can I Miriam all 4 of them into my deck and then potentially find them again, and like maybe stall like that and try and just, you know, recycle this thing? Because if you use the ability 3 times, that's potentially a KO. Like, that'll kill Raikou V. That'll kill. How many things have got 2100? You know, like there's a couple of good hits there. You know, but you'd have to do it 3 times. Like that's empty your entire deck, get all the Tentacle into your hand, Miriam twice, not die between now and then, which is kind of hard because you've got Miriam, which can get all 5 and draws you 3 cards, but doesn't put them in your hand, it just puts them back in your deck, and then you draw 3 cards. So if you have no deck, you would have 2 not Tentacle cards in your deck and draw 3 cards. Which, well, you'd have 2 cards in your deck, draw 3 cards, any number of which could be Tentacle, and then there's 2 not Tentacle of the 5 cards. Clara puts 2 cards in your hand, and they're supporters. So you're going to use 1, right? So you can't just get a complete set of Tentacle right back immediately. So it's an inefficient way to deal 7 damage, but combined with some other attacking Pokemon, where you're just getting close, I think could be really good. Or like if you have like a really good stall strategy, it could be really good just to go, okay, bang, here's my combo, and then here's my finisher, this extra 7 damage counters, which could be really cool. I really like the idea of the complete the set, get a big cool effect. There's one in Magic the Gathering in the moment that I really like, which is just it's a 1-drop, you draw a card, but the 4th time you do it, you get to take an extra turn. So you're like, wow, okay, I want to cast this 4 times. And so I really like that here with the Tentacle. I get something similar with the Klefki, where it's like if you get 4 of them, it's much more powerful than any of them are individually. And it's a Pokemon that when you look at it, you go, oh, this is telling me things about how I should be building a deck. And I think that's really interesting. Like, for example, the V-Union card. The V-Union card says you have to play 4 of this card. Like the whole of the, you know, each arm and each leg or whatever. Otherwise, it's not a playable card, right? And that's a lot more transparent. Like if you're playing Mewtwo V-Union, you're playing all 4 pieces. That takes up 4 slots in your deck and informs some of your decisions about how that's going to be played. With Tentacle, you're like, well, I can play this 1 Tentacle and 3 other Tentacles. That's fine. And the 3 other ones might be more useful than this. But this one says if I have the other 3 in my hand, I get to do a cool thing. And I really like the idea of that kind of flexibility, collecting this set, giving players incentivized goals for how to use the cards for like the maximum benefit, which I think is quite interesting. So this is the kind of design space that I'm thinking about. This is the kind of ideas that I am having. So there we have it. There is a couple of ideas about some custom Pokemon cards. I am curious to know which one your favorite is, so get in the comments and let me know. Or if you think something's busted, if you looked at something and you're like, man, that's correct, what a terrible idea, Let me know that as well, because sometimes, and we see this a lot in Magic the Gathering, the broken cards are people's favorite, and it sells packs and it gets played. But also for the people that don't play it, it's really frustrating and can be annoying. So it's a delicate balance for some of these things, but I kind of wanted to create stuff that was kind of a 6, maybe 7 out of 10. I think I did a pretty okay job, but I'm curious to know what you think. And while you are scrolling down this page to have a look at the comments section, hit the like and the subscribe button. I've got a whole bunch of other stuff on this channel that's worth having a look at. I do a lot of Pokemon content. I got some Marvel Snap stuff. I got some Magic the Gathering historic. I also make board games as well. So there's a lot of other game design stuff here on the channel. So if you're an aspiring game designer, I have a bunch of tutorial type stuff that maybe could help you get started on your journey into being a game designer yourself. So definitely check that out. Have a look at what's going on and stick around because I'm going to be doing this for a while.